what's the big picture there. But let's go over to the Russian side, because you brought this point up, Glenn, that General Gerasimov himself, that the commander-in-chief of the Russian army, is rumored to be in Izium, which is putting himself right in range of becoming one of the next dead generals on the Russian side. And why would he be there? Well, probably because his job or maybe even life depends on it. There must be quite a bit of desperation on the Russian side, because they do not have mobilization yet. They have not mobilized. They've not even fully manned their own crews, according to Michael Kaufman, who was talking, Russian military is running around with, Russian military is running around with, armored fighting vehicles that have maybe two infantrymen in the back, maybe instead of 6 or 8, which you'd normally expect. They are not fully manned, not even close. weren't when the war started, and the casualties haven't helped that. The force ratios you need in an offensive, which they didn't pay attention to when they invaded Ukraine, are certainly still not where you'd want them to be, at 2 to 3 to 1. So the most optimistic prognosis, according to Igor Girkin on the Russian side, who's a huge critic of his own government, is that the Donbass offensive may get some tactical success, which you're seeing right now, but not a strategic or even operational success, which would be surrounding some or large parts or all of the Ukrainian army and destroying it. So when this phase ends and war goes in waves, and right now we're starting to crest the wave of the Battle of the Donbass, Ukraine will be mobilizing, integrating a bunch of new equipment, going through a lot of growing pains, but continuing to gather strength in both manpower and equipment, compared to the Russian military, which will be a spent force. No matter how they perform, they will expend the fuel, ammunition, lives, equipment at some point in the next few months. The fighting's just too intense with the Ukrainians. Where does that leave us, Glenn, in your perspective, when that phase ends? And Putin has shown no interest in peace talks, as of the Ukrainians recently, because of things that have happened. It looks like there could be a momentum shift to the Ukrainian side in the next few months if they hold in the Battle of the Donbass and don't allow for a major encirclement of their troops.
It's interesting. I mean, what worries me most is the South. Is the South and the damage, the terrorist type damage that is being done to the south of the country. And in many ways, I think this is more insidious and a bigger threat to the health of Ukraine than what is happening in the northeast and the straightforward battles in the northeast. I mean, that's just army versus army slogging it out. But what's happening down the south with terror, with making children learn Russian in schools, just trying to Russianize the whole of the south area. That's a much more nasty problem for Ukraine in the main. I think you're right about the Russians will probably run out of energy in the top. I mean, even if they get into Kharkiv and they take Kharkiv, okay, so they flatten it, they start killing people. It doesn't change the body of Ukraine. If they break through around Izium, wow, it then becomes their problem. At the moment, it's Ukraine's problem in defending. But if Russia breaks through, it becomes their problem, because then they've got to do something with it. And even with Gerasimov, as you said, vehicles with only 2 men in, vehicles that have got young officers in who are not even commanding anything, because they're cadets and they were pulled forward to the front line. These boys they're not any longer a credible attack force that can actually start going across the country and doing something. and it's and the population that they're going to get there isn't so much population because lots have already left. So they're not going to be able to use the terror game as much as they've done before. Then they've got to hold the area behind, remembering that Kharkiv has got a large territorial defense force, and it is large, and those boys are going to not give in a hurry. So Russia in the northeast, I would say, has actually bitten off more than it can chew. And as new weapons and things come in, they're going to find, and artillery starts attacking back at their artillery, they're going to find it quite difficult. So, but the south, if they start losing in the north, then what Putin's game can be in the south is to go for a ceasefire. And then the danger is that either the West forces, some people in the West, some countries in the West will want a ceasefire, and maybe even Zelensky wants a ceasefire or feels he needs a ceasefire. I'm hoping that they just tell Russia to go away, because at some stage, Putin may realize that he's losing badly, but he's still got a huge amount of ground down the south. That, all the way Mariupol, all the way across Berdyansk, all the way across to Nikolaev. That's a large swathe of ground, and he could actually sue for peace on that, and then sort himself out over the next 5 years. Get a new defense minister, new Gerasimov, and actually start trying to get himself ready for another war. So the south worries me more than the northeast. The northeast is just fighting, and the Ukrainians will sort themselves out there, no question. Does that make sense to you?
Well, what really needs to happen, and this is, I guess you put your finger on it, Glenn, is Ukraine has to figure out how to equip for and organize for and run what the Russians couldn't do well, which is combined arms maneuver warfare in the south. Because if that doesn't happen, then you're right. The advantage, as we see in this war, is always with the defender. Although I think Russians defending don't have nearly as much of a advantage in Ukrainian soil as obviously Ukrainians defending on Ukrainian soil because of intelligence and population being supportive. But that's really the big question coming up is, can Ukraine turn itself into an offensive combined arms heavy maneuver warfare army? Because they have to. And
because they can't, because the current method of fighting is not getting the gains, is not getting positive gains. It's a slow negative war for them. Even with the new equipment, they've got to attack something, because effectively Ukraine has lost the initiative. And when you lose the initiative, the game is always to the advantage of the other side. So Russia is doing what Russia wants to do at the moment. Ukraine isn't. Ukraine is having to match what Russia does. And they've got to turn that round. At some stage, they've got to become the people that are forcing Russia to take the initiative. Now, that may take 6-7 months. Rember, Second World War, we waited 3 years. 3 years, mate. Long time before we actually, did that big attack. And it may well be that Ukraine's got to wait a year or 2 years to sort itself out and redesign what it's doing before it can actually go. And then we're in the business. Russia has got the artillery ammunition. It may not have all the human beings that it needs at the moment, but it has got the artillery ammunition. Ukraine has got the problem that it's got to keep persuading the West to give it artillery ammunition. And at the moment, I don't think there's enough around everywhere for a war that keeps going for another year. So we're going to have to, they're going to have to start making new ammunition. because you can't ask America to give up all its stocks. I mean, actually, it needs to keep, a sensible amount. Most countries do. They can't give it all up.
Well, if they don't spend it here, they'll end up spending it in a larger war. And I think
they'll end up spending it in the larger war. There's no question about that, which will be 10 times more expensive than what they're coughing up. I mean, as I said, as I tweeted a couple of weeks ago, Zelensky asked for 1%. He should have asked for 10%, because 10% would still be much cheaper than going to actually to have to fight a Russia that wins in Ukraine, because the amount of money we'd have to spend on rearming everybody would be monstrous. Rearming, all of NATO.